Welcome to Calvin, the Digital Creative School. Hello, welcome. Today we're going to do a little beginner course for Blender beginner course. I don't think. Let me see. Who's already here? Who's already in the chat? I don't see how many people are watching right now, so would be interesting to know. Let me open up my notes here. Oops. So, all right, I'm gonna wait a few minutes before we start so people can actually land. Oh, Wrench is here. What's up? What's up, Wrench, my man? Always on the stream. Very nice. In a course. All right. Yeah. How are you guys doing today? As I said, I'm gonna wait a few more minutes for people to join, so I can make sure that everyone who signed up for it on meetup.com is also here, so they don't have to watch it again next time. Or it's actually like really good to be on this live because the first hour is gonna be me going through all the basics, right? Like showing you all the basics of Blender. And then the second hour is all about your questions. So if you want to learn something about a specific topic, or you have questions about Blender or like how to do something, that's what the second hour is for. I can go very individual and yeah, answer your questions then. Wrench, no, this is a special schedule today because the Blender beginner course, or in general, workshops are always at 16 o'clock Berlin time. And the regular live streams, the Create Together live streams, are always at 18, so 2 hours later, which we're still also going to do later today. Ultraman, what's up? And Dennis to Web, hey, welcome. Would you guys like to tell me before we get started here, while we're still waiting for others, what you are looking for, what you are most excited about learning today? Oh, thanks for the follow, Ultraman. I'm back because need to reignite my interest into Blender. Okay. Welcome, Martis. I've also very recently switched to Linux, and it's very cool. There's a few things I need to get used to and I need to figure out, but in general, it's very stable, it's very fast. Yeah, it's just a lot more manual work to like get everything set up in the beginning, but I'm hoping that it's gonna be worth it in the long run. I can also zoom in a little bit here on my camera. Oh, that's too close. Oh! Like a middle thing. Actually, like the white shot is kind of cool, but actually let's do something like this. It's cool, I think. Yeah. What is it? I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Is this wide angle cooler, or should I go a bit closer? I'm gonna leave it like this for now. Ultraman says, I have a little bit of experience with Cinema 4D, but would like to improve my Blender. Okay, would like to improve with Blender. That's good. Yeah. Now, Cinema 4D is, if I can drop a little opinion, I think Cinema 4D is still pretty good in motion graphics, but I think that was what always was the most appealing about Cinema 4D, kind of like the motion graphics aspect of it was really cool, and the whole tagging system, how you can add tags to objects and these tags do specific things, right? That whole thing was pretty cool, but I think nowadays, Cinema 4D, I don't see so much having a spot in the 3D software market. Because like motion graphics wise, Blender is also catching up really quickly now with the geometry nodes and simulation nodes. Yeah, there's so much stuff motion graphics wise you can do with that stuff now too. Okay. Let's say let's start the beginner course at 16:15, so we still give the people a little bit of time to arrive. Oh, now I'm super blue. Oh, damn. Wait, I think I can change the color temperature manually. White balance. Oh, this manual. Strange, where did it change then? Okay, this looks good, I think. Okay. Then Strap asked, sorry, what version of Blender are you working on? I'm always working on the latest release, on the latest public release. Let me actually switch over to the prep browser. You can like slowly get started here. Good desktop scene. So, yeah, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know Blender yet, it's basically a huge 3D program. Like the cool thing, it's very lightweight, it's very small installation, and it starts up and closes down super fast. So it's like a very performance optimized program, but it's got a huge amount of features. You can do almost anything in it, like in the 3D world, right? Like you can model, you can texture, you can sculpt, you can light, you can render, you can animate, you can even edit video. Yeah, I mean, Blender's really, I mean, that's why I personally really like Blender, because it's such a huge toolbox, such a huge tool belt that you have when you know it, right? And when you learn it. So yeah, that's why I think it's worth for everyone to learn the basics of Blender, at least to at least have access to the tools, the program. Before we get started, I'm also going to reset my Blender startup file, because right now this is the Blender version that I kind of like modified, kind of like I created a startup file that has a lot of settings that I would recommend using, right? Like, yeah, little changes in the render settings and like the structure here and what you have in your startup file. So I'm gonna reset this, but you can actually get this startup file if you wanna, yeah, basically start with the optimized version of Blender from my Discord server. If you go on the Discord server, here in resources, you can find the Blender startup file. Yeah, and here you can basically just download it with this link here, and then you open it up, the Blender project file, and then you go down here, File, Default, Save, Startup File, and then you have all my enhancements for the Blender startup file. I would recommend it, but for now I'm going to reset my Blender here so you guys can see how, or better, like you see how Blender is when you install it, right? Like I'm gonna run you through everything. All right, load factory settings. Yes. Actually, progressive. Yes, okay. So this is how you get Blender when you install it. You also check if the preferences are all reset. You see here, it's mostly visible through the key map. Left click, yes. All right. And start up, where was that? Splash screen, yeah, here we go. Okay, Hidden Champion says, hi everyone, I'm here to learn how to build a 3D space for a VR art project. Oh, very cool. I've done some VR art myself. Let's maybe connect after this course here, where I find resources to continue learning, especially the publishing part on Discord and how to make it available on the internet using a VR headset. Oh, very cool. Yeah. Let's stay in touch. Let's talk. I mean, honestly, it would be great if you join the Discord server and we continue talking there about it, because I'm super interested in virtual reality. I've done one virtual reality exhibition, interactive art exhibition in China and Los Angeles. So I would really like to connect with more people who want to do stuff like that. All right, we've got 1 more minute of waiting, and then we're gonna get proper started at 16:15. Proper started. Oh. I'm gonna get 1 more full glass of water. I'll be back in a moment. What does join this Discord server mean? Oh, I see. Okay, wait. Discord is a chat program, like where you can build communities and stuff. And actually, the biggest part of my online school here is happening through Discord. So let me quickly cover school.com. Let me quickly send you the invite link. For anyone who wants to check out more about what I do with this online school here is the link to that. And for Hidden Champion, I'm gonna send you the Discord link directly. Here you go. So you can we can continue the learning process on there after the workshop. All right, I'm gonna get a glass of water, and then we're beginning. All right. Okay, let's begin our journey. So, yeah, as I said, Blender is huge. There's no way we're gonna have enough time today to go into everything, but I'm going to show you all the basics, everything you need to know to at least get started. And then the idea basically is I'm giving you this beginner course, and then afterwards, I would like you to join the Discord server, and if you can afford it, or even if you want to try it out, get like a student membership. I've got a 7-day trial, so you can just try it out, see if it works for you. Wait, let me actually just show you real quick so you understand kind of like the whole context of my course here. The Patreon is here. So, yeah, right. So this 7-day trial here, student membership, you can just try it for 7 days for free, see if it works for you, because I'm basically giving you the ability to send in your projects, right? And that's what I want you to do when we're done with this beginner course. I want you to send in your experiments, your trials, whatever you're doing, and then in the live streams, I'll be able to give you feedback and teach you the things you need to know to continue doing it. So yeah, that's the whole idea I'm doing here. All right, so you can download Blender for every operating system. It's available for Mac, Linux, and Windows, obviously. I'm personally running Linux right now, so I would select this, but usually the web browser knows what OS you're on, and then you could just click download. And just go through the standard installation steps. I'm not going to go into that right now because, yeah, it's pretty obvious, I think. All right, so let's go into Blender. So, and guys, if I'm too fast or too slow at any point, just let me know through the chat. I'm happy to adjust to your tempo, to your speed. And also, if you have any questions, if anything was unclear during this live stream, just let me know. This is supposed to be a very interactive live stream. All right, so when you start up Blender, this is what you see. And the cool thing is we have this little splash screen in the middle, and we can create new files right here, right? Kind of like new projects. And we have these presets. So that means general is usually what you want to click when you want to create anything, right? But there's also a specific startup file for 2D animation, for example, which will give you a more like a Photoshop layout where you can just start drawing immediately, or sculpting where you can start sculpting immediately. So yeah, just try out these, but I'm gonna go with general because yeah, I just want to show you everything, nothing in detail too much. To the right here, we have recent files, which is also really useful. So whenever you start it and you want to just keep going on something, you will find your last projects on the right here. All right, let's start by clicking on General. Oh, it loaded my stuff. Okay, let me reset again to factory settings. All right, this is what you get when you click on General. All right. So, I'm going to introduce you to kind of the UI of Blender first, because it's a little bit different to other software, I think, because it's completely adaptable, completely changeable. Like you can, how the interface is right now, it doesn't need to stay this way at all. Like it can be almost anything. So, for example, you can resize every window, right? Like these kind of panels, they work like subdivisions of a main panel, so you can rescale everything. And you can also create new windows by splitting them. For example, if I want to have 2 3D viewports, for whatever reason, I can just click in any of these corners and then kind of like pull it into the view. And you will see you get this kind of like preview line, and then wherever you let go, it splits that window into 2 of the same, right? So you have 2 3D viewports now, and we can use these for whatever we want to. What I usually use my second 3D viewport is for looking through the camera, right? And that's where the next buttons come in. You've got these buttons here around the 3D viewport. On the left side, we have tools. So yeah, all kinds of tools. I'm not going to go into too much detail of them right now. And on the right, we have kind of like viewport navigation buttons. For example, this gizmo up here, you can just click and drag it to rotate around your object, or you can click on these axes to snap into that perspective, right? Like I can look down from the z-axis, I can look from the front from the x-axis, and then if I rotate it again, it becomes like a perspective orbit again. Mattis asks, where did you get the split line again? The split line comes up anytime you are in the corner of any window, right? Like if you get this little X here, you can drag and then drop it to split your view like this. What I also see what's happening to people often when they do this, like they end up having super many windows and they don't know how to get rid of those. How you get rid of those is by combining them back together. And to do that again by clicking you click basically in the window that you want to expand in the corner, and then you can drag it into, oh, this is interesting, split. But you can basically drag it into the other window, and will then take over that window, like this. So let's see, takes that over, and then takes that over, and now we have one big 3D viewport again. Wrench has a question here. Join the Discord server means signing up to be part of a specific online community on Discord, which is platform. Ah, nice. Thanks. You're just explaining. Thank you very much, Wrench. Okay, so going back to these buttons here. These are basically all the ways you can navigate in the 3D viewport. I showed you the rotating, right? The orbiting, but you can also zoom in and out by click and dragging on the magnifying glass here. You can click and drag on the hand to pan around, and you can click on the camera to look through the camera. You always have one active camera in the scene, but you can have multiple cameras. But the way you choose which camera is the active one is by clicking here in the outliner on this camera icon. And then the last button here is the orthographic view. If you click that, you basically get a flat version of your scene without any perspective. And that might be useful sometimes if you For example, if you model something from reference, right? Like if you have a picture of a car, you put the picture of the car in your 3D view here, and then you go into orthographic view, into the x-axis, for example, and then you can kind of like line out the shape of the car. So yeah, that's what orthographic is for, because you don't have any perspective changes. Oh, actually, I have a way to show you guys my keyboard input, I think. I installed it yesterday, but I'm not sure if it works. Screen key. Ah, yeah, it works. Okay. Let me actually do this real quick so you guys can see the buttons I'm pressing. I think that should be pretty useful. Set region. Alright, so I'm gonna put it down here. Alright, so now when I press buttons, you'll be able to see it down here. Alright, cool. So, alright, let me now show you some shortcuts to navigate the 3D viewport, which is by clicking down middle mouse button, you can orbit. If you hold down shift and middle mouse button, you grab, right? Like you can pan around. And with control and middle mouse button, you zoom in and out. But you can also just use the scroll wheel to do that. But basically the whole navigation is happening through the middle mouse button. And I think that's pretty useful. Alright. So get that, resizing workspaces. Oh yeah, something else I wanted to show you about the user interface is that you can change any type of these windows, right? Like I showed you, you can create and combine windows however you want to. And you can also change the type of what window is what. For example, if I want this outliner up here to be a 3D viewport, I can click on this icon in the corner and select 3D viewport. And then I have another 3D viewport up here. So that means like the user interface is really completely changeable. You can make it however you need it for your workflow. I'm gonna do back to outliner. Let me see if I should explain a little bit more about this. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I'm just gonna explain to you the basic, kind of like the windows we have right now. To the top right here, we have the outliner, which is basically your organization, right? Like you can create collections, which are basically folders, right? I'll just right click here, new collection, and I can rename it to, for example, camera. And then I can drag and drop my camera into this collection. And collections are mostly for organization, but they can also be used further down the line for more advanced stuff like particles or geometry nodes, where you can use everything that's in one collection as a random particle, for example, right? Keanu says, hey, Calva would love to demonstration on making procedural materials. That's a good idea, yeah. Let's do that in the sec hour when we go into more interactive stuff. And also, can I submit animated dice for this week's macro challenge? Oh yeah, that's also a good idea, man. Yeah. Animated dice, like super close-up macro, sounds very fun. For anyone who doesn't know, we're doing like render challenges every week, and this week's topic is macro madness. So if you want to join that, I would be very happy. Alright, cool. So that's the outliner. And here we have our properties. And the properties window is also very versatile. It will show you settings for almost anything. Like up here are the render settings, for example. We've got Eevee right now, which is the real-time render engine, which is getting better and better. Like honestly, the other one, Cycles, which is path traced. It will give you better photorealistic results, all right? But if you don't have a super strong PC, you can always just go with Eevee. It's very, very good by now. Then we have our output settings, kind of like the image type we want to export and the resolution. We have our render passes, which is also a bit more of an advanced topic, but it's basically all the... I mean, when Blender renders an image, it creates all these passes, like diffuse, volume, specular, and then it combines them together. So when you enable these, you can later in compositing, instead of Blender having having Blender combine them all automatically, you can do it manually yourself, and in that way have more control over how the image looks. But it's very advanced. I wouldn't go into that today. Then in scene, we have some, like general scene settings, like the active camera. We have a background scene, a movie clip if you want to have, a movie clip in the background. We can change our units from metric to imperial freedom units, for example. But I'm going to stay with metric because I live in Germany and we use metric here. We have the gravity. So, for example, this gravity will be used for physics simulation. So if you want to have a scene in space, for example, you can put everything to 0 because there's no gravity, right? If you have a scene on the moon, you can put in the acceleration for the moon gravity, which I don't know the exact value for. Was it like a third of the Earth gravitation? No, probably less even. But yeah. Simulation, there's some simulation range settings here. Some rigid body world. Yeah, the rest of the stuff is not so important. And then here in the world, we have kind of like the sky. The worlds you can think of the sky. Because right now, we have gray here. So the sky is all gray. I can get more into detail about this later. We can experiment with that when we go into rendering stuff. And then we have some more stuff here. Settings for the current object. Right, so if I have the camera selected, by the way, Blender comes with left-click select now. I personally prefer right-click select, but left-click select is kind of a traditional way, so it works fine. And right-click is then the context menu. Oh, thanks. Wait, I got a follow. Oh yeah, follow. Thank you. Luviana, what's up? You're also in the stream. Very nice to see you. So I wasn't able to catch who followed me. The screen was pretty small, but thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, the object settings you can change with the camera select, for example. You can change the location right in here, the rotation. But actually, let me show you a better way to do this because it was kind of clunky doing it in here. So if you want to change position or rotation of an object, you can either select the fitting tool for that, right? Like move, for example. You can change the position of it. Or something cool that I also just did. If you click on these things and move it around, you can also always click right-click and then it will reset whatever you started doing. You've got rotation, you've got scaling. But I personally actually always like to use the transform tool because then you have all the settings in one, right? Like I can move it, I can rotate it, I can scale it. Yeah, so the transform tool basically combines all of them together, which is very nice. Yes, all right. And then we have some object-specific settings down here. For example, if I have the camera selected, you can see I have this camera icon. But if I select the cube, we don't have the camera icon anymore. We have this data icon. Because cubes and cameras, work differently. They have different kind of like settings. So if we stay in the camera for a moment, you can see you can change the focal length here. If we go inside, we can see that affecting it. We can change depth of field. So we can select an object we want to focus on, like this cube, for example. And then the focus will always be on that cube. We can... what else is important? Oh, we can add background images if we want a reference image in the background, for example. Let me just put something in here. Like a render I did. Alright, so now we have this this weird render in the background, but usually I use this for footage, right? Like if I'm working on a VFX shot and I have my camera move in Blender and I want to have my footage in the background, this is how you do it. This is how you add your footage to the camera view. I'm going to remove that again for now. Alright, and then if we click on the cube, we've got these data settings here, which are also more advanced, so I'll go into that maybe later. But we also have this material button, which is very good, because materials make a huge difference. We don't see any material yet, because if I change any color here, if I make it red, for example, and then make it metallic, we don't see it reflected in the viewport. And that's because we are in solid view up here. And solid view just shows you basically the surfaces, the shapes of all the objects, but it doesn't necessarily show you textures or colors. For that, we need to switch to the next view, which is shading. And now we can actually see our cube. And we can see that it's kind of like shiny like metal and that it's red. So yeah, you can just play around with these settings here and you will see it happening in real time. And this is actually the render engine I've talked about before, Eevee, the real-time rendering engine. It shows you everything you do in real time, almost like almost like your Unreal Engine quality. It's very good. Change the transparency here. Yeah. There's a lot of settings you actually have in this shader. It's very good. It's very nice. Okay, let me look at my notes, what makes sense to talk about next. Oh yeah, something more I want to share about the interface are these tabs up here. And these are kind of like shortcuts to workflows. Right now we're in the layout tab, which means it's mostly used for building your scene, laying out your scene, and doing rough animations with the timeline here. Oh. Here we go. But we can also immediately switch, for example, into the sculpting tab, and it will automatically enable the sculpting mode, and we are able to sculpt our cube. But you might notice if I start doing clicking on this cube, not much is happening, and that's because there's not enough information on the cube surface for it to be sculptable. So a little trick, if you want to just start sculpting rough and dirty, is to enable dynn topology, dynn topo up here. If you click this in and then you click OK, now you're able to 3D sculpt, and Blender will make sure to add new detail on the surface wherever you need it. And you also have all these brushes down here, so if you want to have a different type of sculpting method, like inflate, for example, this inflates. One of my favorite ones is actually the snake hook. This one just lets you pull out vertices. So yeah, this is pretty fun. You can also change your radius here to make it more general, I guess. So yeah, this snake hook lets you kind of change the shape, general shape of your object very quickly and very efficiently. So yeah, just play around with the sculpt mode a little bit. It's pretty fun with these settings. It almost feels like clay, moving clay around. Very cool. All right, let's go to the layout view. Now we have our material again. You might notice just another little tip here, that you see all the individual faces, right? But if you want it to be smooth, you can actually right-click on it and select Shade Auto Smooth. And this will make the edges stay sharp, but everything else feels more, more smooth now. And actually looks pretty cool. Let's see, workspace, we got that. All right, let's get into some basic settings. Because there's a lot of settings you can change in Blender, and I think some of them are worth changing. So let's go into Edit here, Preferences. I'm going to put this in the center here. All right, I think it usually comes to Interface first. Interface, I usually don't change much, except for temporary editors, and render in I put to Image Editor, because that will not, if you have new window, if you press render button, it will create a new window. But if you select image editor, it will render it inside of Blender. It will just replace one of your current windows with a image editor so you can see render. And I think it makes sense. It makes Windows, your windows a little less cluttered. But it's actually not so important. So I maybe should have not even mentioned it. It's just something I like to enable. All right. Something that's extremely important is under System. If you have a GPU like an NVIDIA ATI, or I think the MacBooks also have GPU support now, you want to make sure that you use your GPUs by selecting one of these settings here. For me personally, since I have an NVIDIA GPU, I can select optics or CUDA. Optics being the newer version of NVIDIA graphics cards with RTX. So yeah, if you have an RTX graphics card, make sure to select optics. For me personally, I have 2 GPUs, but I'm just going to select one. So while I'm doing this tutorial, my PC is not overheating. But yeah, most people just have one GPU anyways. All right. Okay, so something else you should change in the system settings are the undo steps. Because 32 is fine. Like usually you don't need to go further back than 32 steps. But I'm just wondering why limit it, right? Like why only 32? Because you can bring it up all the way to 256. By the way, you can change these numbers in Blender by just click and dragging, right? To like scroll it up or down. And click into it to type in your custom number. And you can even do math equations directly in them, right? For example, I have 10 right now, but I want to have 4 times as many. I mean, I could obviously just type in 40, but sometimes it's quicker to do quick math. So I'll just do times 40, press enter. And then, oh, not times 40, sorry. I had 10, and then I wanted to have it times 4 to have 40. Yeah. So yeah, you can do quick math equations, which saves time sometimes a lot. So yeah, I would change that. Everything else is fine. In save and load, you have the option to have these save versions, which are basically backup files. So these save versions, they will be created in the same folder that you save your original project. So you can have this up to 32 versions. But to be honest, I never needed these. I never needed these backup Blender versions because you have this autosave every 2 minutes anyways. So yeah, I don't see the point in having save versions. I never needed it. I never lost much progress when Blender crashed because the autosave is very reliable. Maybe on that topic, to complete the autosave talk, if Blender ever crashes on you, which happens not so often, you can get the autosaves by going here into File, Recover, Autosave, and then it will show you your autosaves. And you can also check when did it save automatically, right? Like for example, this one, yeah, was saved 2 minutes ago. Even if I didn't save this project at all yet, it still created an autosave, which is very smart, which is very cool. I wish every project, every software did this. All right, let's go back to the preferences. So yeah, I usually put save versions at 0 to just save hard drive space. Let's see, we got settings, the key map. Oh yeah, key map is also pretty important because I told you earlier that I usually have right-click select because it's the old way, how Blender used to be, this old Blender standard. And to me, it actually also makes more sense because then you have, I guess I'm not using the context menu that much, right? If you have left-click select, you have this right-click context menu, but I don't use that so often anyways. And with the right-click select, you have the bonus of being able to always select with right-click, right? Like whatever is in your view, especially with these gizmos. With left-click select, I couldn't select anything that is behind this gizmo. For example, like this, right? Like I couldn't select this cube because it would always use this gizmo instead of selecting the cube. But with right-click select, I can just click through it with right-click, and I've got the object behind it selected. So yeah, to me, it feels a bit more useful. And you still have the right-click context menu with W. It's just a different key. But yeah, I think if you want to work a little bit more efficient, I would definitely recommend using right-click to select, even if it's a bit counterintuitive in the beginning. All right. Other things I would enable are tab for pie menu on drag, and extra shading on pie menu items. And to tell you a little bit about pie menus, for example, with this cube here, Blender has different modes you can interact with or you can add it to your objects. And you can change those modes on the top left here manually, right? You can click it down and then you can see I can go into edit mode with the cube where I can, edit the faces and model manually. I can go into sculpt mode right here. I can go into vertex paint. These modes are a bit more advanced. I'm not going to go into them. Especially texture paint is also very useful, but there's a few things you need to set up before it actually works. But you can also use tab to quickly switch between two modes. Right now I'm switching between object mode and edit mode. But the setting I enabled just now, tab for pie menu. Pie menus basically give you a visual indicator of your options, right? So with the settings I have enabled now, I can hold down tab and then move my mouse, and it will give me this cool pie menu here, where I can then, in the 3D viewport, directly go into one of the modes that I need, right? So I can switch from object mode to edit mode really quick, and it really becomes kind of like muscle memory. When you did it enough times, you will remember in which direction what menu is. So it's going to be very easy to quickly go to edit mode, sculpt mode, edit object mode, sculpt mode, edit mode. Yeah, I would just recommend using this because it will also help you to speed up your workflow. We also have other pie menus added already. If I press C, for example, I switch between wireframe mode and the last mode here for the viewport. If I go into solid view, I switch between wireframe and solid view, right? I'm going to stay in the material view for now. And if I hold down Z, now we get another pie menu, which lets you change between the different modes directly. And it also gives you this overlay toggle, which removes all the overlays, so you have a clean look at your model. If I deselect this, it's even cleaner. Yeah, so it's a very clean look. Yeah, that is that, I think. Yeah, that's it for the key map settings. Navigation. All right, let's get into another very interesting settings. In the navigation settings, wait, I'm gonna actually put this on top so we always see it. So right now, how Blender's navigation works is that it always orbits around one point, right? It always, like whatever I do, it orbits around this cube here. Now this little mesh we did. If I move to the left, then it will orbit around a new point, but I don't really see where it's orbiting around. So this kind of navigation method is useful if you're working on one object, right? Like if I'm sculpting one object, this is very useful. But for me personally, since I'm working mostly on whole scenes, this is actually not so useful, because it's hard to get across your scene. So I usually always have automatic depth enabled and zoom to mouse position. Because what this does is it rotates around where you click your middle mouse button. That means if I want to orbit around this camera, I can just middle mouse click on this camera and it will orbit around that camera. And also the zoom. It will now zoom into where my mouse cursor is, so I can zoom in directly where I want to look at, right? I can zoom into the camera, and then, yeah, this is basically much easier to switch your focus, right? Like I can go super fast from working on this object to working on the camera. So yeah, I would recommend using this if you're not fully focused on sculpting objects. Look here, key map, we got that. Oh yeah, one other thing I want to show you in the settings, and then we are done with that, is add-ons, because Blender comes in a very basic form. Blender comes in a way that you need to do a lot of things manually, but there are a lot. So basically, if you want to do more complex things easier, like simulations or character animation, Blender, how it comes, can do all that, but it might be a little difficult. It might be a little complicated. So you really want to look, or you want to keep in mind that Blender has a big community with a lot of people creating cool add-ons. And those add-ons will save you time and they will get you to the results you want much faster. So for example, I would like to recommend the add-on Blender Kit, which I have here. I have it already installed, but just to show what it does, here it is, Blender Kit. And Blender Kit is a really cool add-on because it gives you access to a huge library of models and materials, and textures, and environment maps directly inside of Blender. So this is definitely the most useful tool that I know if it comes to building scenes and working on, just like creating renders in general. Let me send you a link because BlenderKit is for free. You can download it for free and install it for free. And you get basically half of the whole library for free. You can download whatever you want. But the other half you get for a paid subscription, which is pretty reasonable priced. I think it's, let me see. Oh yeah, it's here. Oops, no, that's not what I wanted to show. BlenderKit, here we go. Okay, I don't know, subscribe. I'm already subscribed, so I'm not sure what it will show you here. No, this is not what I need to show you. Okay, but it's pretty affordable. I think it's like only like $9 per month. But the cool thing is I have a discount code link for you where you get 10% off. So I'm gonna send it here in the chat. So if you create an account or get the full plan with this link, you get 10% off. So you save a little bit of money, and I get affiliate payment. So I get a little bit of payment for recommending you to BlenderKit, basically. But yeah, let's show you what BlenderKit actually does. Go back to add-ons here. How you install add-ons is you click on this little drop-down up here and click on install from disk. And then you can go to wherever you downloaded your file. Most Blender add-ons come in a zip folder. So you just need to select that zip, click on install from disk, and then you have it available in your list here. So I'm going to enable BlenderKit. And you can immediately see that we got this search bar on the top here. And yeah, BlenderKit is amazing. You can just type in whatever you need. Like for example, I need table. I type it in, and then it will show you all the tables you have. Right now, you can see those are locked because they are paid models, but that's an easy fix. You can just go into here, the filters, and click on free first, and then it will show you all the free models first, which are still super good, like super good models here. And then what's pretty cool is you can just drag and drop it in your scene, and it's already here. So seamless, right? It's so cool. Also, for this weird sculpt we did here, we can switch to material view and look for a material that would fit with that. I'm going to try something with glass. I'm going to look for glass, and then I'm going to drop one of these on there. Maybe, let's just try this one. Drag and drop it on the object. And now we've got glass in our weird sculpt. It actually looks a bit strange, the half transparency. Let's look for something that's not transparent, like marble. Let's try this. There we go. Now we've got marble in our weird sculpt. So yeah, this BlenderKit makes it super simple to get started with scenes, and it also helps you to learn, because whatever you download, you can look at, right? Like you can look how people made it, how it's made up. You can look at the shader, how the shader is built, how the textures are built. So it just gives you access to so many high quality objects and assets that you can look at and understand how people made them. All right, let's see what's next on my list here. We got BlenderKit installed. I showed you the navigation. Oh, yes, something I need to show you for navigation, because there's one method of navigation in Blender that's superior to all the others, which is walk navigation. It's so cool because you can literally walk in your scene. Before we do that, actually, I want to show you how to add new primitives into your scene. I like to do that through clicking Shift-A, and then you get this add menu, but you can also find it up here under add. So let's just add a plane. It's scaled up. With S, you can scale objects up. Oh yeah, I guess that's also pretty interesting. It really speeds up your workflow. There's shortcuts for these kind of gizmo settings. So even if you don't have these enabled, if you have the select tool enabled, for example, you can still move everything. That's and the keys for that is G for grab, R for rotate, and S for scale. And to go even further, you can press G and then press X, Y, or Z to snap that movement onto those axes. And you can also, if I want to like move it on the surface here, for example, I can press Shift Z, and then it only moves in all the then it moves in all the directions except for Z. So yeah, that's very cool. I can do the same with the rotation, of course. RX rotates it then on the x-axis, Z on the z-axis. So yeah, that's the cool thing. You don't need to have the transform tool enabled at all to move things around. Okay, so I wanted to show you the walk navigation. You can find the walk navigation here in View, Navigation, Walk Navigation. And this will basically put you into a first-person shooter navigation method, where the mouse is looking around, and with WASD, you look around like a first-person shooter. So yeah, it's super cool. E brings you up, Q brings you down. With spacebar, you can teleport to where you're looking at. And one more thing, you can press tab to activate gravity. So now I'm truly in a game. I can just walk around, Blender will automatically put you on top of the surfaces, and you can even jump with V. So yeah, we're completely in a first-person shooter method now, which is a very fun way to explore your scene. And it's the best way to set your camera. So if I go into the camera view now, and I use the walk navigation, let me show you actually a way to go quicker into walk navigation. There's a few ways how you can get to things you like quicker, right? Like I can right-click on walk navigation and assign it to quick favorites. And quick favorites are your Q button. So if you press Q, you get access to all your quick favorites. I also like to add the undo history to my quick favorites. So now I have walk navigation and my undo history right here. But there's also an even quicker way to get to that, which is shortcuts. And you can see the already assigned shortcuts in kind of like this gray right here, right? So I would recommend you to always look at the shortcuts and try to remember them, right? So instead of actually clicking on zoom region Shift B, I would look at the shortcut and then immediately use it to make sure that my brain starts to remember it, right? Because as soon as you start using shortcuts, your workflow will become so much quicker. But the thing is, walk navigation didn't have any shortcut. But we can very quickly add one by just clicking here, assign shortcut. And then I personally like to assign Shift F to walk navigation. You can see it's here now. And then I can quickly, always press Shift F. And I'm in this cool navigation mode. Yeah. And I wanted to show you how useful it is for the camera, because positioning the camera is a little weird. You can, of course, do it in the third person like this, right? But then you don't really see where the camera is looking at. So you want to do it from the inside, which you can also do with G, R, and all these shortcuts, but it's still not the best. So using walk navigation is actually the best way, because then you can get exactly in the position that you want, and then press left mouse button, and you have your new camera position. So yeah, this is definitely the best way to position your camera, in my opinion. Okay, cool. Kiana says Quixel is also great. Yeah, true. Quixel is also really useful, but the integration in Blender is not so seamless as BlenderKit. Okay, let me see. What else should I get into? Object manipulation, we got that. Oh, one more thing I want to show for object manipulation in the viewport. There's this super cool feature up here, which is snapping. It's usually deactivated, right? Like this magnet here, you can activate it, and then when you move something, it will snap to basically all full numbers, but you can change the type of snapping. For me, for example, I love to use face snapping, and then snap base I usually put to active. And if I move it now, it snaps to all the surfaces in my scene. So I can super easily put this table up on the rock. I can put it down here on the floor. And I also usually have it disabled because when you move something and you just hold down Control, it will automatically enable the snapping feature temporarily. So yeah, this is also another way how you can move objects very quickly. Yo, Spliff is in the chat. What's up? Okay, let me see what's next here. Add objects, I showed you guys. Lights. All right, so if we go into the Shift-A add menu, you can see we also have the ability to add lights. We can add armatures, we can add new cameras. We can add a whole collection. This is something that kind of like goes into what I told you earlier. That you can, if you organize something into a folder, you can spawn basically that instance of that whole folder again, right? So if I rename this one set, and I go here and I spawn set, we basically have the whole collection, the whole folder another time. And this is really useful if you want to create complex objects, and then like complex objects with like meshes and lights and maybe any type of object, and you want to use them multiple times in your scene. This is how you would do it. All right. Oh yeah, by the way, X is to remove objects. Lights. Right. So let's go into lights a little bit because lights are really cool. I'm going to create a new collection to put all my lights into. And then, one more thing that's also very useful. You might have noticed this little kind of like, what even is this? I don't know how to call this design, but it's basically your 3D cursor. You can place this all over your scene. If you left click on something, it will basically snap to that surface. And the 3D cursor is used for a couple of things, but most prominently for adding new objects. So, for example, if I want a light on this table, I can just click my 3D cursor on the table, and then if I add a light with Shift-A here, point light, it will be added at the 3D cursor. It's a bit small right now, so you might not be able to see it. But yeah, it's been added there. And you might also notice that we don't see the light. Like, it doesn't seem to do anything. And that is because in the material view right now, the shading view here, you can click this drop-down button and then enable scene lights. And now you will see the light actually interacting with your scene. So yeah, you want to make sure that that's enabled. You can also enable scene world, which will give you the world that you set up in here. So that means if I change the color of the world, it will also be shown in here. It will not be that way if you don't have scene world enabled. So yeah, that's that. Oh, a little tip I want to show you for world is you can get actually a very realistic looking sky pretty easily by clicking, I think, on here on color on this icon, and then using sky texture. And you see immediately we have like a nice little sky. It's not super detailed, but it does the job. It's like it gives you all the basics, and then you have all the settings to change, kind of like the time of day in here. You can change the position of the sun. So yeah, this is a quick way to just get like a nice sky in your scene. Spliff is working. Completely forgot you could do that. Oh, you mean the snapping, right? The magical 3D cursor. Best feature in Blender. So magical. Yeah, so this is how you get lights, and you see how they interact with objects. You can change all the settings for your light in here. You can make it brighter. You can give it a color. And you can also have different types of light. Like you can switch this light from a point light to a sunlight. And the sunlight basically shines into the direction that it's rotated into, right? So if I rotate it here, it will shine from that direction like it was, like a sun very far away. You can have it as a spotlight. So the spotlight will give you, a spotlight, I guess. And it's got some cool gizmos in the 3D viewport here. This little dot here, if you click that, it will make your spotlight point towards your cursor. And if you let it go, it will stay there. And this one here, it changes the width of your spot, I guess. And then you have a few more cool settings here in the settings. But yeah, that's the spotlight. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Oh yeah, and also in the light settings, this radius here. Let me remove, let me actually make it night so it's dark. Oh, there's another light here, I'm going to delete that. Okay, so right now, right, make it a little bit brighter just to see something. Okay, so right now you can see that the shadows are very sharp, right? It's basically like a cutout shadow, and you can change that with this radius. The radius basically tells Blender how big the light source is. So if I increase this, the shadow will get softer because the light source is bigger. You can also do that here in the 3D port directly. This is actually something I just figured out, that you can click and drag the size of your light source. That's pretty cool. So yeah, this will make it possible to make your light source soft very quickly. The instance collection thing. Yeah. 3D cursor you worship as a god. Damn. Damn, man. Alright, so we got that. We got the objects. We got the light. Properties. Okay, so basically now we have most of the basics for you to be able to render an image, right? Let's just finish this up by placing the camera on this table here. And I want to just like place a cool object there. I want to have my focus on the table. So I select my camera. And then depth of field, I'm going to deselect the cube here that we selected earlier. And then we have this manual focus distance here. We can click and drag it to like control our focus. But we can also click on this picker here, and then we can click on the screen where we want the focus to be, which is also super useful. So I want the focus to be there, in the middle of the table. And then I'm going to add another object in the middle there. Let's look for a cat. I'm going to select my set so the object gets spawned into that collection. Ooh, photorealistic cat. Let's drop it. Okay, this sometimes happens when you load in a complex object. It will need to calculate the shaders if you are in the shading viewport. And that, depending on the object and the complexity, it might take a moment. So for me, it's doing it. Yeah, I'll just wait for a moment. Usually Blender doesn't crash, so just waiting for a bit usually solves the problem. Let's see, but even if it crashes, it would be interesting to show you the recovery. How... okay, nice. It's done. Okay, so this cat is pretty dark though. Let me change the scene a little bit. I'm gonna make this table a bit bigger and move this cat up on top. Oh, this cat is actually super heavy. Heavy, I mean in the sense of like computational heavy. Add another light here. I want an area light here. Let it shine. Right there. Make it a bit smaller. Less power. Yeah, because I just want to see the face of the cat. Yeah, like that. I'm also gonna hide this rig here with H, so it's not so annoying in the viewport. Alright. Yeah, I guess something like this is fine. I'm not trying to create a piece of art here today. Just trying to render an image. Focus on the head of the cat, like that. Yeah. Can you check how the cat looks in cycles? Yeah, sure. Alright, just to show off cycles, we can change the render engine to cycles here. And you want to make sure if you have a GPU to select GPU compute here too. And then cycles will be activated in your viewport with the last shading option here, which is this. And then cycles will jump into action and will give you a photorealistic path traced result. The cat actually looks kind of nice. Yeah. But you can already see like Eevee and Cycles, they're not too different. They are pretty close. So if you don't have a super strong PC, Eevee will get you a long way to making cool renders. Yeah, you're right. The face is a bit scary. It's kind of strange. It looks a little bit stressed. Okay, so let's get into rendering. I usually render by just pressing F12, right? So if you press F12, it will use the render engine that you selected in here. So for me, it's using Cycles now, and it will start rendering. And we can see it's getting clearer and clearer, like it's getting less noisy and less noisy over time. But it shows you up here, we have almost 300 out of 4,096 samples. And that amount of samples is actually so unnecessarily high. Like I personally never render above, or like almost never render above 500 samples. So yeah, this is just taking unnecessarily long because it's already pretty clean. And it's just taking unnecessarily long. So I'm going to cancel with escape and change the maximum render samples to 500, how I usually have it. And then if we press render again, it will be much quicker because it's not going all the way up to 4,000 samples, because 500 samples is usually more than enough for most renders. So waiting a moment until it's finished. Honestly, for this render, we could even get away with 200 samples. It's already super clean. And it's... Oh yeah, at the end, when it finishes rendering, it will denoise it. So now we have a completely noise-free, clean image. Yeah, so this is basically your final render. And you can save this image by pressing Alt-S. And it will give you this pop-up here. You can go to my downloads, for example, and then choose the file format. I'm going to go with PNG, RGB, or RGBA. RGB alpha will give you also alpha, which will make the background transparent. Your sky basically will be transparent. But if you want that, you actually need to enable transparency in your film settings here. Transparent. So it will actually render the sky as a transparent object. Otherwise, the RGBA will not do anything. So basically, you need to enable RGBA and transparent at the same time, or just RGB and disable transparent. So I'm gonna do that, call this cat test1. And yeah, just save as image. And then we saved it on our computer. Yes, that's how you save an image. If you want to render an animation, let me actually show you something. I haven't gone into animation at all yet. Everything has been static so far. But, oh what? Oh, this table is animated? The table is already animated. That's funny. I guess it's this rig here, right? If we go into pose mode. Oh yeah, we can see the keyframes here. If I go into pose mode on this table and I select all the bones with A, we can see these keyframes. And the keyframes are basically animations. So we can select these keyframes and change the timing of the animation. Or we can just press X to delete them. Oh, now it's in this weird position. I want to delete everything when it's like this. So yeah, now it stays in that position. It's a cool rig actually. We can just move this. We can move this. Yeah, pretty cool rig. But I wanted to show you how to animate stuff. So if I want to animate this camera, for example, you can add keyframes to any property inside of Blender with these little dots here on the side, right? So if I wanted to animate the X position, I could press this dot here, then go forward in time a little bit, change the, no, that's why, change the X data, and click here again. Then you have these two keyframes, and it will animate between them. So yeah, that's pretty useful. This is basically how you can animate anything. But there's a cool way I want to show you in a more interactive way to animate stuff. So I'm going to right click on this and clear keyframes. So all the keyframes are disabled. And now this button here, this is automatic keying. So that means as long as this is enabled, when I change anything about my object, it will create a keyframe. So you can see, like, I move it and it already creates keyframes for all these values. So I can go forward in time, select my other position, and now it's already created this animation. And to take it even further, I'm going to delete these keyframes again. You can even keyframe while playing back. So that means I press playback, right? So it plays, and then I can do whatever I want, and it records those keyframes. So yeah, and if I play it back now, it plays that back. So yeah, this is a very cool way to kind of like puppeteer your objects or your animation. I'm going to remove these keyframes again. Oh no, I'm going to keep them, but I'm going to move them to the beginning, because I'm going to show you how to export an animation. I'm going to go to the last keyframe and set the end position to the current frame with Control-C, Control-V. And now we've got this crazy cool animation. Very nice. I'm actually going to use Eevee for rendering this, so it's just a bit quicker. We've got, I want motion blur, I want ray tracing. Yeah, that should be enough for now. You can already see the motion blur in the viewport, which is actually very cool. All right, so Alex is also here. What's up? That's some disrespectful table rig. That button can really help you to make your life hell if you don't turn it off. Oh, that's a good point, Alex. So yeah, if you ever use the automatic keyframing, you need to make sure that you disable it again if you work on something else, because yeah, it can happen that you forgot to disable this again, and then you change your scene, move objects around, and then suddenly when you play it back, all your objects start moving. It's like complete poltergeist situation in here. So yeah, just make sure you disable that when you don't want to automatically keyframe everything. Okay, so how to render an animation. I showed you how to render one still frame, right? By just pressing F12, and then you will get one still frame. Like this. And then you can save it with Alt-S. But to render an animation, you want to make sure that your output settings are correct. And what I like to use usually, let's actually save this project now. With Control-S, you can save your project. I'm going to create a new folder, my downloads, cat test, I'm going to call it. And I'm going to call this also cat test v1. So now we've got our Blender project saved. And now I want to render an animation, right? The output path is where all your frames are getting saved in. And for some reason, the standard is TMP, which doesn't make much sense because it's a folder that's like randomly placed somewhere in your computer. So I usually put in 2 backspaces, which means in programming relative to the working file, right? So if I put in 2 backspaces, type in render and then 1 forward space, this basically means it will create a folder where this project file is saved, and it will create a folder render, and then inside of render it will create these images. So yeah, so then you want to make sure that you have the correct settings for your export. I guess PNG is fine, it's the standard. If you're getting more professional, you should look into using OpenEXR multilayer, but that's a bit more advanced, so I'm not going to go into that right now. It's basically a data format that's very useful. It's still very small, but it's not compressed. It gives you all the data you ever need, and it is linear color space, so you can color grade it endlessly. But it needs a little bit of setup because it's not made as a final image presenting format. It's more like a intermediate between different softwares until it gets put into a final image like PNG or MP4 video. So for now, I'm going to use PNG. Put the color depth to 8 because we don't need all that data. 16-bit is a lot. Yeah. Just to explain to you these 2 buttons, these are very useful or very important. If you have override enabled, Blender will not care if there already is a render or if there already is a file. So I usually disable this because I don't want to accidentally overwrite a file that took an hour to render, right? So just make sure you have this disabled, because what happens then is Blender will just skip the frames and the files that already exist and just render the ones that are missing. So this is also very useful if you want to stop your render and then continue later. You should have overwrite disabled. Placeholder is only really important if you do render farms, if multiple computers are rendering on the same project. So I'm not going to go into more detail on that because most people don't have render farms. Yeah, and then we can just press Control F12 and it will start rendering each frame after the other. So yeah, now we've got our first one. It will show you what frame it's currently on. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so it's rendering frame after frame. But to make this quicker, I'm going to actually lower the resolution. So instead of, for example, I can change these settings here. I can lower them, right? But I can also just lower the percentage. I can just put this to 50%, and then the export will have 50% of the original resolution. Let me quickly open up my folder here. Okay, so... Oh wait, it didn't create the folder. Maybe I used the wrong direction of these. Let me see. If I do this and then 12. Yeah, now it worked. Okay, sorry guys. I showed the wrong direction for the backspaces. I'm getting confused with that sometimes. So yeah, this is the correct way. You've got the forward-facing slashes in the beginning, and then the back-facing one in the end. And then you can see it created this render folder, and it's dropping all the frames in here. And you see it's also pretty fast, like Eevee is rendering pretty fast. Placeholder is the JPEG preview, right? Yes. So if you have placeholder enabled, it will create a JPEG file next to the file format that you selected here. What was the slash tip again? Okay, so if you put this path in, I'm going to put this also in the chat. So here you go. If you put in this path in your output path, it will, I'll show you. It will create a folder that's called render next to your Blender folder. So it's relative to where you save it, which is very smart, very automated. And then it will put all your rendered frames inside of that folder. Yeah. And we're gonna wait a moment until it start rendering. So guys, I'm gonna go into the interactive part now, after showing you the finished render. So you can already start typing down your questions or get prepared on what you want to know more about. Why is your bro out of focus? The cat gets out of focus because when we set the focus point, wait, I'll show you. When we set the focus point with our camera, it just changed the focus distance, right? Like it's a kind of like a one click, one value kind of system. So it's not adaptive. It doesn't stick to where we clicked. It's just putting that focus point in that time, or like in that distance, right? But it's not adaptive. It doesn't change with time. If you want it to change with time, like for example, I always want his face to be in focus. What I would do is, oh wait, let me put this table into the set. I would create a new empty and rename it to focus, and then select the camera again, and focus object, I'm gonna use focus. And now the camera always focuses on that empty. I also have this in my startup file. I always have this focus object in my startup file because it's very useful to have one for your cameras. So yeah, that's how you do that. Okay, now that we have all these images, I mean, yeah, how do we play them back, right? Because images are not really made for playing back. So this is a bit awkward to like use your image viewer to do that. Blender actually has a built-in way to render, to like show your last render. You can do that here with render and then view animation. And then Blender will open up a little window and it will show your finished animation in there. So yeah, we can look at it here. And then we can press Control again to close it. But if you're doing more 3D work, I would recommend you using DJV. DJV is a program that lets you play back image files. So if I drop this image file into DJV now, it will play it back super fast and super smooth. And it also, DJV also supports EXR. So if you're getting more advanced, it will be able to show you the different render layers. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you installing DJV. Can actually select it from here. Yes, here we go. Yeah, so DJV, very good program. Keanu says, would love a demonstration on making procedural materials. Oh, that's right, you asked about that earlier. All right, so yeah, guys, this is the end of the basics. And now we're getting into the interactive part. How late is it actually? 17:25. Okay, we've got 30 minutes for interactive demonstrations. So let's get into procedural materials. For that, I'm just gonna create a whole new project. I'll click here, new, general. All right. So let's go into material shading. Okay, so the shading tab is also something like a pre-built tab that puts you into like a workflow that's made for shading, where you have your project or your computer folders here, where you have a image viewer here. So yeah, this will help you to create shaders and materials. For example, the shader this human comes with in my startup file, you can see how I made it here. Did I blow your mind, Alex? about the tabs, you mean? So yeah, you can see I created this procedural material directly in here, but I'm going to show you how to create it from scratch. So I'm going to disable this material here and click New, and then it will give you this node-based window here. Let me actually expand because I don't need this image viewer here, and I don't need the file explorer. And I also don't need this stuff. Yeah, I purely want to do my material. Okay, so just the 3D viewport and my material. And I also don't want any overlays. So nice. Okay, so let's recreate that. The standard shader you get is the principled BSDF, which is a kind of like a ultra shader, which gives you a lot of options to make realistic looking materials, right? Like you can turn it metallic, you can change the roughness, you can change the color. I showed you all this before already. You got subsurface, which will kind of like emulate human skin. You can see it like, yeah, you can see how it looks like the sun is shining through the skin now. Never downloaded something faster. That's awesome. But what do you mean? My my startup file you like? Alright, so yeah, with this. Okay, Hidden Champion wrote something. Okay, Hidden Champion, I'm gonna get to your question after showing you the basics of the shading. So yeah, let's actually reset everything here. And now I want to add this grid, right? Like this grid I have down here. With Shift A, you get all the different nodes you can have in creating shaders. So in texture, we have a few procedural textures basically. For example, the brick texture. If we connect this color output to the surface, we immediately see what it does. Just as a black and white image basically. And then yeah, for procedural textures, you have all kinds of settings to like make this look how you want it to look. the scale, whatever. And I'm thinking of maybe using a material, because you can. Oh yeah, okay, I'm just gonna drop in this cat render that we made as a material. Doesn't make much sense, just to show you. So if I drag a texture in, like an image file, I get this new node, and I can connect that to the surface, and then you can see it's mapped onto my human. It doesn't make much sense right now, but yeah, this is how you get your textures on your human. And you can also use this texture, since it's a node, as any type of information, right? So I can put the color data into the base color of this principled, and then you see we have the shading of the principled BSDF, but with the color of our texture. We actually have a better texture, because this kind of looks a bit confusing. Maybe let's use this here. It should be a bit less confusing. Yeah, okay. So I used a different render as a texture now. And the cool thing with nodes is that you can feed information in and reuse information however you want to. For example, I can, instead of using it as the color, I can use it as the metallic information. So now, where this image basically is white, it will be metallic, and where it's black, it will be not metallic, right? You can see that here. Like, yeah, where it's white, it's pretty metallic there, and everywhere else it's not metallic. So yeah, this is how you basically reuse data from materials. You can also use it for the roughness, and now it's like the roughness is different all over the place. Yeah, but let's stick with recreating the shader. So I want the texture checker, right? I think that was it. I was brick, right? Let me see. I used brick. Okay, I used brick. All right, let's click back in here and get the brick texture. Put that here, put that here. And now you might see that it's not mapped correctly. It's kind of like mapped strangely, right? And to change how the shader is mapped onto the object, you need to create here a mapping node. And then in vector, you need a texture, what is it, coordinates, right? Yeah, texture coordinate node. And texture coordinate gives you the different ways you can map anything onto surfaces. So right now it's ungenerated, but if I use UV, it's much more correct, because UV maps are basically like unfolded 3D models. And most models come with a UV map, so it usually should work. If it doesn't work, you should use generated or even object. So yeah, let's use UV for now, since this object has a UV map. And then with these settings, with the location and everything, we can change the location of our pattern. Oh, by the way, if you hold down Shift, it will make your movements slower, right? So you have more control. And if you press, was it Alt? I guess that's it. Yeah, with Shift. Oh yeah, and also moving the mouse wheel then makes it slower or faster. Okay. So, and we can also change the scale here. If we click drag down to select all of the values, we can change the scale of it. Or we can get this out and type in value. And then we get one single value to control all the different datas. Okay, so got that. Okay, let's change the colors here. So I'm gonna make this one also white, or maybe, yeah, I'm gonna make it white for now. That is black. Something I did for the material here is I gave it a bit of bump, right? Like right now, this is very flat, but if you look at the finished material, it's got kind of like a depth. It looks like it has, it's like interacting with the sun a little bit more. Let's do that here, and we can do that by getting a bump node. And then what we want to do is feed in the color into the height. and then use this normal in this normal input. And then you can see we have, it almost looks like the black parts are deeper than the white parts. So this gives you a little bit more detail. We can also invert it and make it look like the white parts are sticking out. It's a pretty subtle effect right now, but I think we can make it stronger. This. Yeah, if we increase this, now it looks even more 3D. Oh. Yeah. This looks pretty crazy. Was it bump? I'm kind of like... This means... I feel like there was a different node that also did this pretty well. Bump. No, I think that was it, yeah. Yeah, okay. So this was a way to like give your materials like the illusion of three-dimensionality without having to change the geometry. Okay, yeah, and then we can change the colors here. We can make it whatever we want. I guess that is kind of like the basics of node materials. Alex, if you have more questions about this, let me know if you want to like know something specific about the creation of shaders. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different types here. Okay, one more thing. Like, for example, if I want glass, there's a special glass shader. So if I put this into the surface, then it will look like reflective glass. And I can still use my texture on the color here. So yeah, there's different shaders for different kind of looks, but the principled BSDF has the most capability, the most flexibility. But I would definitely recommend you to just like go through all these settings, especially the shaders, and see what each of those do. Just try them out. All right, let's go into a hidden champions question here. Thanks for the introduction on Navigation Blender and Navigating Blender. How do you recommend I'd get started in Blender for this? Build a simple room with objects and images hanging on walls, maybe also add sound, then make it available for others to visit. First person view, walk, teleport in the room, in the internet, either just with their normal devices or using VR headsets, or at least make it available for me to test it in with my VR headset for a start. Okay, interesting. Yeah, you can actually do this pretty well in Blender. I think Blender itself comes with a VR viewport add-on. If we go into add-ons and look for VR, oh yeah, we have it. VR scene inspection, and this is pretty straightforward. Like if I enable this, right, I can just go into my layout, for example, and then you can find it in the side panel here. Oh, this is something I didn't show you guys. You have a side panel. It's not like you don't need it for many things, but it is useful for some things, especially for add-ons. You press N, it will show you the side panel. And here you have some settings, some basic viewport settings and stuff like that. Some more Blender Kit settings, but you can also see your VR settings here now. And if you have a VR headset like an Oculus Rift or whatever connected to your PC, and you click Start VR Session, it should just work. Like I've used this in the past a lot, and it's very seamless. It works very, very quickly. So yeah, this is an easy way for you to experience your own scene in VR. And if you want to export your scene to the web or to VR, there is a very cool add-on called what's it called? Blend for Web. Blend for Web. Yeah, this one. I used this one in the past too to create 3D websites, and it's very straightforward. Like it works pretty well out of the box. I'm sending the link to the chat here. And yeah, that basically lets you export your whole Blender scene as a website. So people can interact with it. You can select how they're able to go through it by like first-person shooter or stuff like that. But yeah, it is pretty straightforward, and then you can add all kinds of programmability to it. Let me actually show you. I think one of the sites I did is still online. Dino. It's saved here. Oh wait, I did my the Mori website. I still have a part of that because we used to have a whole like a fully 3D website, but then I got the feedback from some people that it was a bit confusing. Even though now I hear the feedback that they missed the old website. But yeah, let me show you a little part of that. So 3D website. Okay, so this is completely built with Blender and exported with Blend for Web. And yeah, we have this cool interactive 3D world. And this is basically exactly how it looked in Blender. Like, it's really cool how it can just export your website. I've got a secret high quality button on the bottom here. There, now it's high quality and everything. Yeah, so yeah, it's very useful. It also has VR support for like Firefox VR and stuff like that. Let me see, I think there was like a 3D scan. Oh yeah, this is a 3D scan of our old office. I have here with like little tags on what is what. This used to be my workspace, this corner here, Calvin's chair, we got a dragon box. So yeah, this is how you create 3D websites with Blender. Hide. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Hidden Champion. Now let's see, there's another question on this shading. Why are there some edges like the human figure is built from various parts? Ah, I see what you mean. Shading. So this is kind of like a limitation of UV mapping, because I used UV map, right? And the UV map is actually split up like that. Right, can I do this? I'm gonna split this up. I need a UV editor here. Oh wait, I don't need to split it up. We have a UV editor directly as a tab. UV editing, here we go. So yeah, this is the UV map of this character. And that means whenever like it's one island, right, like islands like these, the texture will look seamless, but as soon as it needs to go to a different island, there will be a cut. So this might also be a reason why you don't want to use UV map if you want to have one material or like one texture across the whole body, right? Like I'm going to show you a fix for that. We go back to shading here. So if I want this to like be seamless across the whole body, I would not use UV. I would use object, and then rotate it in a way where it makes sense. What I see, there's a problem. Okay, there's a problem with this specific shader here because it doesn't have depth. It's not truly 3D, it's two-dimensional. If we go look at it from the side, it looks stretched. But if we use other shaders, for example, let me remove this. If we use noise texture, put this in here, oops. Hello? Okay, here we go. So yeah, this noise texture doesn't have the same problem. This noise texture is seamless from whatever direction you look at it. So it really depends on the texture you have. And for image textures, there's actually also a way to fix this. Let me actually get a material in here. Let's look for a rock. Yeah, I guess any of these would do. Let's put this rock shader on here. Okay, so now we have this extremely strange looking rock shader. And okay, it's not so obvious here, but like you still have these like islands, right? Especially if we have the displacement. It's not like, yeah, you've got these cuts in between. It doesn't look like a seamless texture, right? So you can fix that because right now, standard mapping method is UV mapping. And because these UV maps are split up, it looks like this. But we can use a different mapping method. Oh, but this shader is a bit complex for that. Woof. Okay, but let's do it. So, go select this, add a mapping node, and then in here we get the texture coordinates, and then we basically need to connect this to all the texture nodes, to all the textures that need this kind of mapping. Oh, I'll show you a cool add-on that actually speeds up this process. So let's go into Preferences, and let's enable the Node Wrangler. Node Wrangler gives you cool little shortcuts to do stuff with nodes. For example, now I can hold down Alt, right-click, and will give me this magnetic line, and this basically connects the two nodes that are next to this line automatically together in a smart way. So I can just quickly Alt right click towards all these nodes, and it will connect all of them together. So now all of them are using this mapping method. We should be able to see the result in a moment. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we don't see the seams anymore, but the mapping is wrong because it's generated, and we only want to use object. And then I think we need one more thing to make it seamless. See how this looks. Yeah, it's still stretched in the z-axis. So what we want to do is select all these texture nodes and change this flat thing to box. Oh, by the way, also very cool tip. In Blender, if you have multiple things selected and you use the Alt button while clicking it, it will change exactly that setting in all the other selections, right? So I changed it from flat to box, and it will change that on all the different nodes. Also, if I change this blend, it will also do that for all the different nodes. So yeah, this is how you would map a 2D texture onto a 3D model in a seamless way. Yeah, now you see we have this rock texture everywhere, and it's seamless. It doesn't have any cuts or anything like that. If we go back to UV, put it in here, you can see the cuts again. It's loading the textures. Yeah, now it's cut again, but using this, it's seamless. So I hope that answers your question. Kartik says, hello Calva, you were teaching about procedure texture. I want to learn more about texture and shaders in Blender. Are you going to be continuing teaching it in more detail in later class? Yeah, I think I'm gonna create a more in-depth workshop, especially about creating textures and procedural materials. I do have quite an extensive knowledge about that at this point. So I want to do like a separate kind of like advanced workshop about that topic. Kian says, does the mesh density alter the texture size like the head and the hands? The mesh itself doesn't really change the textures except for the displacement. Like this texture came with a displacement, right? If we disconnect it, you can see it's not displaced anymore. We connect it, it's displaced again. And that's basically using the geometry of the mesh. Let me see if I can demonstrate it to you. So, okay. Multi-res, yeah. So if I turn off multi-res, for example, you see that the displacement is less detailed. If I enable it, it gets more detailed. And if I add a subdivision surface modifier, it will get even more detail to be displaced with. Yeah, so now you can see the displacement is very detailed. Yeah, so basically the shader needs geometry information to be able to displace it. That's the only connection between the geometry and textures, I would say. It looks so funny. Let's turn down the scale actually a little bit. Yeah, more like this. A little bit more natural. Okeanos says, Also, what the difference between plugging the bump node to the normal end and displacement end. The bump. This displacement. Displacement and normal are different things. Displacement is actually displacing the geometry, and normal is just giving you the illusion of displacement by making the light interact with the surface. So you can't, like, this could not go in here. It's like two different things. Patrick says, can you please tell again the reason for the cuts that was coming? So the reason for the cuts was basically that UV mapping did not work for this object, because the UV maps, when we look at them, UV maps. Yeah, when you look at the UV maps here, they have cuts themselves, right? Like, they are all cuts. So basically, the displacement would have cuts where these islands are also cut. That's where the cuts came from, and that's why for this object specifically, UV maps did not work for displacing it. It's very technical. Like, I don't know if it makes complete sense to you, but yeah, it's it's a bit technical. It needs a bit of understanding of how UV maps and texturing works and stuff. But I hope it makes a little bit more sense to you now. Kind of like what a game engine does. Yeah, this is exactly like how a game engine works too. All right, we still got 10 minutes. If anyone has questions, please write them to me. In the meantime, I would really appreciate if you joined the Discord server, because on the Discord server we do the most interaction, and we chat all the time, and we help each other. So when you have more questions the next days, just join the Discord server and interact with us. There's also always announcements when anything is happening. I'm gonna post the link to the Discord one more time here. And I'm gonna also send the link to my Patreon again. One more time. Yes. I'm making $27 a month right now. Actually the only paying student I have right now is Zach. So I'm very thankful for that. Thank you, Zach, for being my first paying student. I would definitely recommend you trying out the student membership for 7 days free, at least, to see if my teaching method works for you. You will have a lot of benefits, and I'm gonna basically do like the whole thing is kind of like a mentorship based teaching approach, where I go into detail on what exactly you need to learn, but in live streams, so everybody else can still learn while I teach you something more specific. Yes, all right. Thanks for the course. Okay. Have a great day, Matis. I hope to see you around. Yeah, guys. I guess we can just hang out for a few minutes until the time is over, and then I'll grab something to eat. And then around 19, we will do the Create Together stream, where I go through student submissions and I help you guys to accomplish what you want to accomplish and learn what you want to learn in Blender and Resolve mostly. This actually looks pretty cool. Ooh, Cycles is much brighter. I like this part here. This part looks very cool. And Champion says, cool, thanks, Cal, for the free intro. See you around. I'll start playing with Blender to create that room. All right, nice. Oh yeah, I'm not sure how much I went into detail for the room, but it's basically using Blender Kit. Like, yeah, I would. You can just start using Blender Kit to get all the assets you need, adding primitives for the walls like cubes and planes. Yeah, but definitely, I think I showed you all the basics that you need to know to create your room. If you have any problems, yeah, just reach out on me to me on the Discord server, or get the student trial and send in your project file so we can work on it together. Yes. Keanu says, any macro photography camera tips? There's definitely one tip you need to know. Like if you want to get close to objects for macro photography, you need to enable, or you need to lower the clipping, right? Because if let me show you. Disable depth of field. So right now, if I go really close to the hand, for example, I want to like really have a macro shot, like it will start to disappear at some point. And that's because of the clipping distance. So if you need to get closer, you need to change that in here. The start clipping, you need to put lower to like, let's just add another 0. Oops, 0.01. And then you can get much closer to your object. So yeah, this is definitely very important for macro photography. Otherwise, yeah, it's also pretty important that you work with real scales. That's why I put this human always in the startup files to make sure that when you build a scene, that it uses real life scales, so you can, so when you do physics simulation or use depth of field, that all those values are physically correct. It will just help you to make things feel and look more physical, correct, and realistic. Katik says, how you knew you need to switch it to object from UV to fix that cut issue? Just experience, man. Just a lot of experience with those problems in the past. Maybe to go a bit more in detail with the different methods here, the texture coordinates. Object coordinate basically means that it's tied to an object, right? And if you don't put anything in here, it's basically the object where the material is on. But I can also create a separate object like this empty here, circle. Oh no, the circle is not so useful. This one. And I can select that object in here. And now the texture will be mapped to the position of that object, which is also pretty cool and gives you like completely different types of options. So yeah, that's cool. Generated, I think, is pretty similar to object, but the results might look different. Let's actually see what the difference here is. It looks like it's given you the same result as object. The mapping is different, but it looks similar. Is it the map? Yeah. So I guess generated and object are pretty similar, except for with object you can have it mapped from the position from a different object. Camera is pretty interesting. It basically projects the texture onto the object from the camera view, and that is pretty useful for like patterns. Like if you're going in a 2D style and you want to have like dithering patterns and stuff, you can use this. Window is almost the same. I'm not super sure what the difference is between camera and window. I think it does. That's almost the same. It looks a little bit different. Maybe actually for like projecting 2D textures, window is more useful because camera still does some kind of like warping, some kind of displacement, while window looks like it's truly just mapped to the view. And reflection, I've never used reflection before because I don't really understand what it does, and I also never seen it used in any shader. It just confuses me, man. I don't know what reflection does. So yeah, those are some of the differences here. All right, guys. Yeah, it's only 2 minutes left, and I would say, I'll end the stream now of the beginner course. Thank you very much for looking, watching, joining. I hope you learned all the basics. If you have more questions the next days, or if you want to share your experiments and have me have a look at them, join the Discord server. Please consider about the Patreon. I want to make this my full-time job, and that would be really cool if I was able to do that at some point. But yeah, still I want to keep everything free and open so everyone can learn, so I can just share my knowledge with everyone. Other than that, thanks for joining, and I'll see you in around 1 hour. I'm gonna eat something, and then we're gonna do the Create It Together stream and go through your submissions. All right. Bye Ultraman, bye Kartik, bye Wrench, bye Keanu, bye Hidden Champion. Anyone else here? Bye Martinez. Matis, I think he was gone already for a while. All right, bye bye.